I'm with Richard Dore, Leading Director at Proteus Leadership, and I'm asking him to share with us a few tips on how leaders and managers can better manage the tough stuff. So over to you, Richard. What would be your tips on how to better manage the tough stuff?
The first big tip I'd give people is always go in with a plan. So be prepared and have a plan when you're going to have these tough conversations.
You say having a plan's important. Are there particular things that should be included on the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. We often talk about a 5-step plan. So the first thing is to really label the issue, because often people get quite vague about what the actual issue is. So if you can't label it, don't go there. Secondly, talk about the impact that their behaviour or poor performance is having. Always go in there with a suggested or planned action, so some sort of solution on how you can resolve the issue. And the final 2 steps is really about making sure people are clear with the consequences of no change. And finally, the last step is to make sure you follow up with them after that conversation, so you ensure things happen.
I know that sometimes we forget to mention explaining the consequences of no action, so we simply ask people to change their behaviour. Why is asking people to be aware of the consequences of not changing their behaviour so important?
Oh, well, many managers go into a conversation and think their number one thing to do is to tell the staff member what's wrong, so they tell them off as such. But what's just as important is saying, well, if there is no change in behaviour or no change in their poor performance, what the consequences is. So there's some sort of action as a result of the conversation.
And you mentioned impact as well. Why is impact so important?
To me, I often say impact is an insight test. So when you talk about, or more importantly, ask your staff member what's the impact of their behaviour or performance, often that's when they have that aha moment and they get why it's critical that they look at changing the way they behave or perform in the workplace.
This can often be a very scary thing for managers to do. Often there's a lot of nerves involved in having these conversations. What's your advice for managers going into these conversations?
You're right. People tend to run a mile from this stuff. They hate it because it's really an unpleasant thing to talk to someone about something that's going wrong. So my number one piece of advice is don't go for perfect. People often think they have to script this so well, and if they say something wrong, they're going to get in trouble, the relationship will break down, or industrially they'll be in hot water. I think it's almost you just embrace the fact that it's not going to be perfect, but you're going for a good outcome.
So don't go for perfect, but go for the outcome that you're after.
Correct, absolutely.
And I guess part of the reason why people are apprehensive is in the past things may not have gone according to plan. What do you do if it doesn't go according to plan and it's far less than perfect?
Oh, and before I give you tips on how to deal with the real difficult reaction, is the reality is many people have been burnt in the past because someone did react badly to a conversation. But if you look at the numbers, 9 out of 10 conversations go really well. But the 1 in 10 that goes badly, here's the good news, it's actually quite predictable. So a negative reaction to a conversation, if it's predictable, then you need to go in there with a prepared response on how you're going to handle that difficult reaction.
So what are the typical reactions you see, and just maybe 1 or 2 tips on what you can do to prepare for them?
Yeah, the typical reactions that people will get emotionally upset, or the other one is that they'll get quite hostile or aggressive towards you by raising the issue. So if that's the case, when someone gets really upset, allow them to be upset. It's a difficult conversation you have, but the key thing is with your plan that you've got to keep going with the conversation.
So revert back to what you've planned to say, let them have their vent, so to speak,
Yep.
and then come back to what you've prepared.
Absolutely. Now, if you need to have a quick circuit breaker, if that's appropriate, do it, but continue the conversation after that. Don't let it go to the next day.
You mentioned before that people can get hostile. Sometimes managers share with us that it's the opposite reaction that's harder to deal with, people that are just passive or disinterested. What do you do in that scenario?
Firstly, try and engage them as best you can. Ask them some good open questions to get them to, connect why it's really important that they dialogue with you. But ultimately, if they switch off and get completely disengaged, or probably even worse, passive aggressive, then your plan will get you through. So you just continue outlining, again, what the issue is, the impact, the action, the consequences, and follow up. And then that gives you the space that they've heard the conversation, and then you follow up, say, within a week or so, and that's where you can get really good momentum and change.
Richard Dore, thank you for your insights. I know that you and the Proteus team deliver the Managing the Tough Stuff workshop around Australia. You also deliver it in-house, and it's not just you, but many of the Proteus educators have got great experience at this program. Is there one final word that you'd leave us with before we go and get into our workplaces and start managing the tough stuff?
Yeah, embrace it. Tough stuff is a part of life, and the more you embrace it, the better you get at it, and the better life is for you and the people that you're leading.
Thank you, Richard.
My pleasure.